Well, good morning, everyone. It is a calm, clear, and quiet morning here in Death Valley. And I hiked to an area where I was last year. And I found this scene that you see behind me with these grasses that are flattened down and covered in salt. And set up a composition last year, and I was not 100% satisfied with the composition. But also it was a wind-affected photo. It was really windy when I was trying to shoot it. And so I came back here to see if I can make some more sense of the scene, but I think it's changed a little bit since last year. I don't quite see the same potential as I did last year, but I might have to sit here and stare at it for a little while. It's also in some rather harsh light right now, so it's best to photograph it when it's in very calm and very even light just after sunset or before sunrise. But I'm not sure it has the same potential as last year because I do think it's changed a little bit. But that all being said, I think the plan for today is to go check out a nearby canyon. And I went up it a little bit last year, but I want to go up a little further. And then also in the afternoon, there's two potential scenes to photograph. Either some sand dunes. I want to get a close kind of abstract photo of the sand dunes. Also, there's a scene I found yesterday, but that one really would benefit from some clouds. But I'm going to keep wandering around here, keep staring at the salt grass here, see if I can make any sense of it. But it is a absolutely wonderful morning here to be in Death Valley, and looking forward to seeing what happens as the day unfolds. I'm taking some time to enjoy this canyon. I walked up this one quite a ways last year, but I didn't make it all the way. And I'm curious what's around each corner. One of the things I do when I go on these trips is I keep an eye out for certain themes, certain things that catch my eye. And so far this morning, I saw some desert holly plants that were backlit. They looked really, really beautiful. Now that particular plant wasn't necessarily great for a photo, but it puts the idea in my mind in terms of paying closer attention to those plants when I see them. But now I'm just enjoying the shade here. It is not a hot day, but if you're out in the sun, and the Death Valley sun is quite intense even if it's not hot. I'm thoroughly enjoying this, and coming up with a plan for the afternoon. I want to visit the dunes, but there's a particular type of photo I want to get that I really need to see the light ahead of time. So I think I'm going to do a scouting trip out to the dunes in the evening and scurry around and try to find just the right subject. That way I can come back for it in the days to come. But it's nice too because that takes a little pressure off me. I'm just going for a little wander and checking things out. So after having some lunch, I decided to come out here to the mud flats. I shot a photo here back in 2014 that turned out pretty cool. You have these dots of salt in the foreground, which is actually pools of water that evaporate. It happens on a daily basis. What happens is the water here flows out from some natural springs, and it flows out onto the mud flats. And then a daily process of evaporation makes the water recede and then come back, and just the daily filling of these puddles and evaporation creates some really cool patterns. But this is a location that would definitely benefit from some clouds. And there's nothing but blue sky right now. So it's more so checking up on the place, see how the conditions are, see where the interesting patterns are, and something to plan for the days to come. But since the conditions right now are quite good for smaller scenes, I think I'm going to head over to the sand dunes and see if I can find an interesting composition, just a close-up. And originally I was thinking not even bringing my camera, just running around and checking out the dunes and trying to find just the perfect spot to point my camera. But based on what I learned last year, I think I could probably pull my camera out there as well and maybe shoot, maybe not shoot, but it'd be certainly good to have the option. Now I'm gonna head back to my truck, head over the dunes, kill a little bit of time, and see if I can find something to point my camera at. Beautiful day here in Death Valley. Well, it's a little after 2 o'clock now, and got my camera with me, and I'm heading out to the dunes. I came here last year, and I found 2 compositions. The first was the base of a dune where the dune was up against some dried mud, and it was okay. I thought it had a lot more potential than it really did. And then I shot a vertical composition, and it had a sand dune with one back behind it. And on that one, I found that the foreground dune was the best one. And I could crop it, but I wouldn't mind finding just a simple composition of a dune texture, but timed at the very moment when the sun is just partially submerged back behind the horizon. And you get this interesting mix of light, this warm, cool light that has a directionality but less intensity. And so I'm heading out to the dunes to see if I can find something to point my camera at. It's about a month later in the year than I was here last year. So I was here on January 31st last year, and now it's the 4th of March. But the sun's gonna move a little bit in terms of where it sets on the horizon, but I think there's a lot of good dunes to choose from, so we'll see what I can find. Well, it was a little after 4 p.m. and I went ahead and set up my camera. And I'm just setting up a simple horizontal composition here just of the texture of the sand dune. I have a normal lens on there, and I also have a filter holder on the front so I can use a 3-stop ND filter as we get a little closer to sunset. My goal is to take the photo just as the sun is partially obscured by the mountains. It results in a really nice mixed light where you have the directionality of a low angle sun, but the intensity is diminished a little bit and it balances a little bit with the ambient light. The tricky thing with large format is that during that time of day, the shutter speeds are going to be in a little bit faster than a second. And with a large format lens, the time shutter speeds are in full stop increments, which is a little bit of a challenge because if the meter says to use 0.8 of a second or 0.6 of a second, then I have to start adjusting the aperture to make that setting possible. And it gets to be a little tricky, so by using a 3-stop ND filter, I have the ability to kick the whole thing into the range of seconds, which is much easier to time just with a stopwatch. But it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. I use photo pills to figure out where the sun is going to set on the horizon there. And I chose a dune that should be at a pretty favorable angle where the sun's coming in or really kind of side lighting the dune. It's a pretty straightforward shot, and based on how this turns out in the coming days, if I have the opportunity to come back here, I'll go for some even more dynamic shots where there's maybe rounded dunes or stuff along those lines. But it's so hard to predict until you see the dunes in the actual light that you're going to be working with. But I've got some time to kill, but looking forward to seeing how this one turns out. Well, I went ahead and exposed 4 sheets of Velvia 50. One safety shot relatively early on, and then another one as we got a little bit closer to the point where the sun was dropping below the horizon, and then 2 more sheets when the sun was partially obstructed by the horizon. And I honestly have no clue how this one's going to turn out. This is definitely a little bit on the experimental side. Thankfully, the technique I'm using in terms of the ND filter, metering off a gray card, all that, that made the juggling a lot easier when it comes to balancing a shot like this. But it's hard to say because I was not able to look through the viewfinder on the scene as I was shooting the photos. So I'm just kind of guessing how it's perhaps going to look when I set this camera up several hours ago. But there's no real surprises. It was basically as planned. It'll just all be up to how does the photo actually look once I see the film. But it was really calm during the whole thing, which was great. And definitely feels great to expose the 4 sheets of film today and then the 2 sheets of film yesterday. And man, it's such a different day. Just blue skies, calm today. And yesterday, man, it was windy. But now it's time to get the camera packed up, head back to camp, get some dinner, and come up with a plan for tomorrow. Limitation is a powerful force. It ignites our creativity, all the while enticing us to overcome the very walls that confine us. It's the very heart and soul of the creative process, and one of the many reasons why I love working with large format. It was only last year that I learned how to work with this very fleeting window of light. But even with that knowledge, the results are always uncertain. It's difficult to visualize a composition ahead of time, especially when the light changes so dramatically in that final minute. As I returned to my truck that night, I enjoyed the calm of the desert twilight, with no knowledge whatsoever of how the photos turned out. Of the 4 sheets of film I exposed that evening, these are the final 3, all of which are Fuji Velvia 50. You'll see how much the light changed in that brief window when the sun was partially obscured by the mountains. It worked out well overall, though I do wish I had pointed my camera slightly to the left for a more consistent pattern. Even so, I was able to crop the image to better fill the frame. I look forward to returning to these dunes in search of more photos in this very special light. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you around next time. If you enjoy this ad-free and clickbait-free content and want to help me live my dream, a voluntary contribution of just $24 a year helps keep my gas tank full and my film freezer stocked. For more information on how to support me and my work, please visit the donation section of my website at benhorn.com/donate. I also have prints in my portfolio box set available on my website. You can find a direct link down below in the show notes. Thanks in advance for your support.